talk about power, which has something to do with work and energy. So I'm going to ask a question first. You have a suitcase that you need to bring up from the ground floor to building, to the top floor, and the difference between the ground floor and the top floor is 20 meters. It takes you 30 newtons of force to lift the suitcase. So we can figure out the work required to get to the suitcase to the top floor, and it's really, the work done is really force times displacement, and we're told that the force is 30 newtons, displacement is 20 meters, so that's 600 joules. But we do have a couple of different choices of how we're going to bring this suitcase up. One of them is carry it up ourselves, so that's up the stairs. The second one is to put it in an elevator, but we're going to go through the exact same displacement, and the same force is what's required to be lifted. So essentially, in each case, I'm doing 600 joules of work, or 600 joules of work has to be done. Maybe not by me. The elevator is doing some work in the second case, but it's 600 joules of work to get this suitcase up to the top floor. Now, what's the difference between the two methods? And you might say, well, I'm doing the work versus the elevator's doing the work, and that's true. But another thing that's also positive, or that's also true, is that the work being done, even though it's the exact same, the carrying it up the stairs takes a lot more time. And I hope that you appreciate that. So power is really how much work is being done per unit time. All right. And that's really what power is. So it'll take you about 4 minutes to get up the suitcase, for you to do it on your own, but it'll take the elevator 20 seconds. So you're able to do work at a rate of 600 joules per 240 seconds, and that's really 2.5 joules per second. So that's the work that you do. The elevator can also do work at a rate of 600 joules per 20 seconds, and that's 30 joules per second. So that's really what power is, and the elevator just has more power. So the rate at which work can be done is called power, and power is measured in watts. So it is joules per second, but it's better known as watts. You should always be careful to distinguish between the symbol for work, which is capital W, and the short form for watt, which is also capital W. So watts is a unit, whereas work is a parameter. So please be careful. The equation for power is then work per unit time, or change in energy per unit time. And change in energy, you know that is really what work is, right? Work is the change in energy. And the unit of time must be in seconds. So if you have a question that gives you minutes or hours, you've got to change it to seconds. And also another reminder, work and change in energy are the same thing. And yeah, I say that there, and you should remember that from before. So that's really the equation that we're working on today. Nothing more to it. We talk about power rating as well. So not just power of, how much power does it take to do something, how much power do we have. Power is also a way to describe light bulbs and heaters. And you probably have seen that. If you look on your fridge, you'll see power rating and so on. So the number of watts indicates the rate at which the light bulb or heater can transform electrical energy into light or heat energy. Power is always considered to be positive. And I'm about to show you a table that'll show you some power values for a variety of household devices. If you know or can estimate the number of hours that a device is used, you can also then calculate the work done or energy consumed by the device over the course of a month. So we can really figure out the energy that we're using based on the power rating of each device. The information in the table shows how quickly each device uses energy. So let's take a look and see. So that's what power is, how quickly we're using energy. So 1,000 watts for outdoor hot tub. TV is something that we use, 80 watts, and hair dryer, 1,000 watts. So again, this is joules per second, because that's what a watt is. That's what power is. Laptop computer, 20 watts. Compare that to a desktop computer, 200 watts. So that's pretty cool. 60 watt incandescent light bulb, well, it tells you there, it's 60 watts. So that's how many joules per second it uses. Compact fluorescent bulb, 11 watts per second. So the fluorescent bulbs are using much less power, and that's what makes them awesome. Air conditioner, yikes, it's already a lot, you can tell, right? Okay, so let's compare the amount of energy used in a day by a hairdryer and an aquarium pump. The hairdryer is probably only used about 15 minutes per day. If you have hair like me, probably 15 minutes per day. Some people don't even need it. If they have short hair or whatever, you don't need a hairdryer. But if you did, you need it about 15 minutes per day, let's say. The pump needs to run constantly, so it is used 24 hours a day. If you have an aquarium, you know that the pump is always on. hair dryer is not. So let's go ahead and take a look. So first of all, we need to know the power of a hair dryer, and we were given it in a previous table. I'm going to rewrite it here, 1,000 watts, so that's joules per second. Time is given here 15 minutes. You've got to convert that to seconds. So make sure you convert it to seconds. And from there, we can figure out how much energy this dryer is using, right? Because the power equation is energy per unit time. And we just have to rearrange it, multiply by T on both sides, and we'll end up with energy is really power times change in time. And power is 1,000, time is 900. We multiply those two together and we get this big number. One thing to note, this big number can really be put into scientific notation. I'm going to move the decimal over to when I get to 9. So that'll be here. So I can write this as 9.0 times 10 to the exponent. Let's see how many times I move the decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5, 10 to the exponent 5 joules. Okay, nothing changes. I'm just writing this, and this is kind of like a nicer way to write it because I'm less likely to make a mistake with my zeros. I'll show you another way to write it as well in a sec. Let's go and look at the aquarium. So again, the aquarium does need to run constantly 24 hours per day. So right away, you should be changing this to seconds. If I'm talking about power, that's what I need it in. The power is 30 watts. I did not give you that value. I'm giving it to you now. 30 watts is what this aquarium pump needs. Time is 86,400 seconds. So that's a big number in one day. Let's go ahead and figure out how much energy is used by the aquarium tank. And again, we're going to rearrange the formula, multiply the numbers together, and dang, we get a really big number. Again, we can move the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's really 2.6 because I'm mindful of my significant figures. I need just two of them, times 10 to the exponent 6, I think, right? I said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 10 to the exponent 6. So that's how much energy. So even though our aquarium uses a lot less power, it ends up using a lot more energy per day because it has a lower power rating, but it's used more. Now, when large amounts of energy are used, people don't really like to use joules anymore because it's just, you're not going to see 1,000,000 joules and so on. And reality is that when we use these devices at home, they end up using a ton of joules, right? So people like to use this unit called kilowatt hours. Kilo you should know that means 1,000. Watt is a unit for power, and that's joules per second. And hours is, well, 1 hour has how many seconds? I think 3,600 seconds, right? 3,600 seconds in an hour per 1 hour. So that's really what that is, right? Instead of joules, we're going to talk about kilowatt hours, which is essentially, you're telling me to say it's 1,000 joules per second times 3,600 seconds in an hour, which is really equal to 3.6 times 10 to the 6 joules. All right, so that's really what a kilowatt hour is. So when I have these big values for joules, I can in fact just convert it to kilowatt hours. And look at this, what could I do? Let's say I have 2.5, that's what I had in my previous example, times 10 to the 6 joules. Right, that's what I had in the previous example for my aquarium tank per day. And I want to convert that to kilowatt hours. So I'm going to multiply by 1 kilowatt hour per 3.6 times 10 to the 6 joules, right? Because that's really what the conversion rate is, right? And that's how we convert. We multiply by the conversion rate. Well, look at that. That actually ends up getting rid of joules. It gets rid of 10 to the exponent 6 altogether. So it's really 2.5 divided by 3.6, which I don't know what that is. 2.5 divided by 3.6, we get 0.7. So that's really 0.7 kilowatt hours. Now, if you didn't really want to multiply by kilowatt hour per 3.6 times 10 to the 6 joules, you can really just remember, hey, if I want to go from joules to kilowatt hours, I just have to divide by 3.6 times 10 to the 6. That's kind of like a shortcut, right? And that's how we go, and from joules to kilowatt hours. And you should know, I mean, if you look at your fridge will tell you how many kilowatt hours are being used, how much energy your fridge is using, or other appliances as well. But I think I usually see it on refrigerators. So in the previous example, there we go. I talked about this. We can go ahead and change it. Here are some practice problems. I'm not going to do them here. You can calculate the work done by a car motor when it develops 6.5 times 10 to the exponent 4. Sorry. I don't want to see it. 6.10 times 10 to the exponent 4. So this should really be exponent 4 watts of power in 7.0 seconds climbing a hill. And the second question is, calculate the power developed when a crane causes the energy of a steel beam to change from 1.4 times 10 to the exponent 4 joules to 3.7 times 10 to the exponent 5 joules in 2.5 minutes. So please go ahead and do this on your own. You can pause the video, ask me questions if you need to know, but you should be able to figure this out. It's work per unit time, right? So here, if we need work, in the first question, you really just need to multiply power and time, make sure time is in seconds. And in the second question, I mean, you're asked for power, but we have energy. And we know how much change in energy is, right? And change in energy is nothing more than work, right? So change in energy is work. And what's the change in energy? Where we're told we're going from this to this. So we can subtract those two to figure out the change in energy. And then, of course, time. We need to figure out what 2.5 minutes is in seconds. All right? Okay, so the very last thing that we like to do here is to do a fun experiment. So fun lab. It's really talking about how much power we need to climb the stairs. And what we did is we used a stopwatch, an iPhone stopwatch. Lucas and Cam did this. So they actually measured their mass. So those are their masses. They measured the time that it took to walk up the stairs in seconds. And they also measured the time to run up the stairs. They were not skipping. They were running on each and every step. There were 18 stairs, and each stair was 27 centimeters, which is the same as 0.27 meters high. So we can figure out the work done against gravity to lift each person's mass up the stairs. And really, what's work? Well, work is really force times displacement. And what's force? Well, force is really the mass times acceleration, right? We know that's Newton's second law times displacement. So we're going in the y direction, right? We're going up the stairs. The mass of the person, I'm going to use Lucas. Well, his mass is 69.9 kilograms. Acceleration, it's not how fast he's going. It's acceleration due to gravity. So that's really all we're doing here. We're using acceleration due to gravity, which is not 6.9. Don't know why I wrote that. It's 9.8. Acceleration due to gravity is 9.8. Times the displacement. Well, the displacement is whatever 0.27 times 18 is, right? Because that's the total height that he traveled. So 0.27 times 18, because there's 18 stairs. And that is really the work that Cam is doing. You can also figure out the work that Lucas is doing. You can also figure it out for Cam as well. So that's done. And then we need to figure out the power. And what's power? Power is nothing more than work per unit time. So you just have to divide it by the time for each scenario. So you're responsible for handing in